Hello, welcome to Friday I'm in Bed.
Podcast for midlife women living their best life, but in bed by 10.
This week on Friday I'm in Bed, we're starting with Harry Styles on Saturday Night Live and that Make America Healthy Again hospital sketch. It pokes fun at all the different approaches to health, but we're asking, do some of these things actually work? And where's the line between helpful and full-on grift? Because honestly, at our age, we've never felt more pressure to be doing all the things just to be healthy.
Then we're talking about the announcement that British banknotes could swap historical figures for British wildlife. Some people are very upset about it, but considering it came down to a public vote, did they even vote? Grab a cuppa and let's get into it.
Hi, Gemma. How's it going this week?
Okay, I hope. Obviously, actually have no clue because you are not here. You're off gallivanting around
Spain.
the world. Where are you?
Spain. Not gallivanting. Yes, so we
Sound like gallivanting. Oh, how's your holiday going?
So yes, we are recording this last week for this week because this week I am in Spain. Although I'm not currently in Spain, I'm currently in my lounge for anybody watching this on YouTube. Yes, I am having a week off. I'm going to my in-laws, have a house in Spain. And my husband had a week's holiday that he needed to take before the end of March. So we decided to go to the house basically in Spain. And the reason we are in Spain is last year when we were in Spain, I got the dates wrong of the flights home. So I thought we were flying home on the Sunday, and on the Saturday lunchtime, we were outside about to go to the beach having lunch when I got an alert that said your flight leaves in 3 hours, 4 hours it was. And I was like, don't be ridiculous. My flight leaves tomorrow. And I then looked at the app and realized our flight did indeed leave. And we were an hour away from the airport and we had to pack and clean the house. But we didn't do a very good job of cleaning the house. So we are going to Spain to clean the house before anyone else in the family sees the mess we left in.
So we did something similar to that when we went to Venice for my 40th. And we were there sat in our Airbnb and thinking we were leaving the next day. And then we suddenly realised the flights weren't booked till the day after.
Oh, so
our flight was too late. However, we had nowhere to stay. The Airbnb was booked, and so there was a panic. But fortunately, the flights home were pretty cheap, so we just booked. We booked an earlier flight and came home. But yeah, they were pretty cheap, fortunately. But it's the coordination, isn't it? When you've got to do all these things, when you've got to try and line up your accommodation and your flights and then the dates just get confusing. You're like, is that a Saturday or a Sunday? I mean,
really cross with myself because I'm normally so efficient, and I was like, how have I got this so wrong? And then I realized when I got home how I got it wrong was it was correct on the calendar, it was correct in all my paperwork and everything, but because we were coming back on a Saturday, that meant I was back to work on the Monday. I just kind of blocked the whole time off in my work diary. So because of course I wouldn't be working on that Sunday. So it was totally my fault, but panic. And then I do remember we stripped the beds and threw them on the floor, and the towels are all wet and we're all left in the bathroom, and we're going back to that. So hopefully they're not moldy.
So that's something to look forward to then.
So not gallivanting at all, but It is sunny and it will be nice.
Yeah, I mean, clearing up a few potentially mouldy towels shouldn't hopefully take so long. So maybe there'll be some gallivanting after that.
Yeah, they'll just be chilling, I think. It's nice weather. It's like 21 degrees or something. So it's just nice spring-like weather. So it'd just be lovely to not be here.
Yeah. Well, it's quite nice here today, but it's going to start raining again. So you get to avoid that, hopefully. Not like me, who went to Morocco just as it started raining. But there we go.
Anyway,
enough talking about past, Kate. Let's move on. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is, what's inspired this topic is a Saturday Night Live sketch that Harry Styles did a week or so ago called Hospital. So it's kind of parodying the Make America Healthy Again thing that's going on, where they're all very into I almost don't even want to call them like alternative therapies. They're very woo-woo, like full woo-woo. So basically in the sketch, it's imagine yourself a hospital drama, but in this one, all the things are based on like RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again agenda. So Harry Styles is playing a doctor who's there's a stroke patient. He says, what she needs is a steak. She needs protein, stat. And then there's a certified energy healer with over 3,000 followers called the Wellness Seeker, playing the nurse. And they're treating patients with LED masks and raw milk in IV bags. Methylene blue, which isn't one that I'm aware of, but the full moon ceremony, I'd probably do a full moon ceremony if I'm honest. Then claiming that someone died from the COVID vaccine because they shot them. So, and Tylenol, paracetamol as we call it in this country, gets slapped to the ground. We don't use any of that nonsense because of the apparently causing autism.
They unplugged somebody that was vegan.
Vegan.
Very funny, actually, and it resonated with me quite a lot, actually.
Yeah. So it was very funny, but there is obviously a bit of a because that's how Saturday Night Live works. There is a bit of a serious issue behind it, which is what I thought we would talk about today. We're not just going to sit here and list all the hilarious things that happened in the. I mean, we could because it was very funny. If you haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. You should go watch it. We've talked about the Manosphere quite a lot in the last few weeks. I know you hate the term, Kate, but we're going to call it that because everyone else calls it that. And we've talked about conspiracy culture and how all these things tie together. But there is another side to it, and that kind of wellness side to it ties in a little bit with the Pilates girly as well that we were talking about a few weeks ago, is these kind of wellness influencers online where follower numbers matter more than actual credentials, and they'll try and sell you a cure for something. And it matters because it is affecting real people's lives, much like we were talking about the Louis Theroux documentary and not focusing on the victims. It's all very well to say you find it very funny when there's and again, a lot of them are female influencers, though there are male influencers out there telling you that you don't need medicine, you just need to drink lemon water for breakfast and cleanse yourself. And I've seen some awful ones with women. I have only eaten raw meat for decades and I only poop once a week. And you go, that's not healthy.
Yeah, where's the fibre?
Yeah, maybe try some vegetables. Yeah,
okay, so you're going to talk about fibre. But
people listen to this stuff, they take it on and it does real harm. And it was particularly relevant for me. There was a study that came out recently about people with cancer and who had used alternative therapies, and that the 5-year mortality rate was significantly higher in patients who had used alternative therapies. I don't know if I'm moving on a little bit here, but yeah, so this is important. But I think, do you know what, we'll move on to that study a bit later on. We will start with the wellness and the wellness influences, because I know that you have opinions on this and supplements and things like that.
Yeah, so there is nothing wrong with any of the things that are mentioned in the skips. So, obviously not shooting people. That's wrong. Doing vegan, if you want to eat lots and lots of protein in the form of meat, that's your choice. Sound baths and yoga and all these things are all great. So yeah, no, we're not dissing any of it. But I feel really strongly about, it's almost like the female version of the Manosphere. So as in online people influencing you to the point of it being unhealthy, or a way just to get rich for the person that's influencing you. And obviously this is a very female space. There are men that do this too. So let's face it, but a lot of the time the target is a woman. So it might be there are gym bros, as I call them, and there are lots of sort of spiritual guys selling wellness and stuff and foods, food advice and all this kind of thing. But the end user, or the victim, as I might like to say, is a woman. And the bit that annoys me with it, and why this get sort of resonated, was they're so like all or nothing. You have to have 150 grams of protein a day, otherwise you are going to get osteoporosis when you're 90. And it's like, stop, or you must never eat carbs, or you have to do. And it's like, we're all different. We're all individual. We all have different health needs. We all have different genetic, makeup. We're all different ages. We're all different affluence. Not, quite often a lot of the things that they want you to do, it's great if you've got lots of money and lots of time.
Expensive. Yeah.
It's this one size fits all kind of. There's a meme that I keep seeing, which is, in all the years in the 80s when I was offered drugs, I never felt as under pressure to do something as I do by all the protein messages out there right now. The meme is much better written than that. But, that kind of the pressure. And of course, eating protein is really, really good for you, particularly when you're losing muscle mass and you're menopausal. So is fiber. So is a mixed diet. So is also joy. Funnily enough, it's, cake makes me happy. I am allowed to eat it. And when I eat their cake, I get people bombarding me in my messages telling me I'm going to die type of thing. And they're not actually saying that, but that's the kind of, it's cult-like. And I think it puts women under pressure and it makes women spend money that they maybe don't need. Yeah, I'm passionate about it from that point of view. But none of it's wrong. A soundbar, yoga, Pilates, supplements.
Love it all. Very relaxing. See, I do think it comes from the same world as the extreme manosphere, where in this kind of social media world where it's like clicks and views at everything, nuance doesn't sell. It used to be sex sells. Now it's just extremity sells. Go as far as you can. No, okay, but maybe eat a vegetable occasionally. No, it's only meat or only vegetables or only uncooked things or or only juices. We don't need solid food. There's no middle ground. There's a difference, very much a difference between kind of complementary or alternative therapies that you might do, like you've mentioned, yoga, sound baths, meditation, all that kind of thing, and things which could do active harm. So eating too much protein could damage your kidneys, whatever. But the idea of eating more protein for generally most people in the Western world is not that bad a thing. Cutting out carbs could be a bad thing, but particularly raw milk is one that I always come up with. I mean, raw milk can be actively damaging. I've drunk more raw milk before. There's a place near us that does it, and they've got a little vending machine. We bought somewhere we were out on a walk, but to be honest, it made me a bit nervous. Pasteurization as a process has saved thousands and thousands of lives. I am immunocompromised, and drinking raw milk is not a thing that it is recommended that I do, shall we say? Because what that pasteurization does is kill bacteria, So, and you don't want that. You don't want that bacteria. And the other one is the anti-vax angle, which is very much a part of this. It's not just a pro-alternative therapies, it's an anti-conventional therapies. So, and this RFK Jr. and the Make America Healthy Again thing a lot of the time ties into this anti-vax stuff, which is a whole big part of the same rabbit hole that we saw in the Louis Theroux documentary we were talking about last week. Sheep, that's what they call people, sheeple, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm on my 14th or 15th COVID vaccine now. So.
I think it's particularly relevant today because we've got a meningitis outbreak happening from, in teenagers, and it's growing by the day. And obviously it started in one nightclub in Kent, and it's now grown across, the universities. They've got it in London. Somebody has taken it to Europe, and vaccines were given from 2015 onwards. My children, for example, my son's going clubbing on Saturday night. Is he at risk? And this whole kind of anti, if they roll this out, then actually, we need to not have people catching things that they could die from.
Measles is another one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's lots of, without going down a conspiracy rabbit hole, I do, because obviously on the one extreme there is, don't put suntan lotion on because that's what gives you skin cancer, not the sun, not the UV rays, or don't vaccinate your kids, all this kind of stuff. But there's also, I was going to say low level theories, but I can't even remember what the theories were that were in,
Well, see, one of the things connected to this, and this is this study that I wanted to talk about at the beginning, but I was getting ahead of myself because I wanted to talk about the sketch. But what the sketch made me think of was there was a new study in that's just come out this month. And I have notes, so I'm going to look at them so that I don't get this wrong, because otherwise somebody will tell me off. So it was Yale researchers, and they analysed over 2 million women with breast cancer that were diagnosed between 2011 and 2021. And they split them into who had used just complementary and alternative medicine, so no conventional medicine. And that was a very small group, worth noting, only 273 people. Those that used complementary and alternative medicine plus traditional treatment, of which there were only 568. And then the rest of them that received traditional therapies for breast cancer, or 49,000 that received no treatment at all. So, and they looked at their survival rates for that. And the 5-year survival for standard treatment was 85%, and for complementary medicine, 60%, and no treatment at all, 47.8%. If they used combination therapy, so they used traditional therapies and alternative medicines, it was 81.2%. So a lot of the narrative that's coming out of this is that people who use complementary therapies die of cancer more often than people who don't. But that's not really what this showed. And I think we risk polarizing ourselves into like either anti-complementary therapies or pro-traditional, without finding that there can be a middle ground where you have your vaccines and still take some vitamins, for example.
Well, I think the clue's in the word complementary.
Yeah. So the things, so the actual survival rate was very similar amongst people who used traditional medicine and traditional and complementary medicine, and between people who use no treatment at all and only complementary medicine. So one of the criticisms of this is what this actually shows is that not having traditional treatment is the issue, not using complementary or alternative therapies. You can do both, but if you don't do traditional, that's the problem. So arguably it also shows that complementary therapies don't work, but it depends. What it also didn't do is split those complementary and alternative therapies into what they actually were. And so there's a big difference between coffee enemas and taking a turmeric supplement, for example.
Exactly.
So it doesn't split those down. We don't know what any of those people actually used for their complementary and alternative therapies. There are some complementary therapies that do have some evidence for them. It's just not strong enough yet for it to be. When it is strong enough, they'll take the bit that works out of it and turn it into a medicine, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So turmeric is an anti-inflammatory. It's a known anti-inflammatory. You can take a turmeric supplement absolutely fine, but they're still investigating whether it's as an effective anti-inflammatory as, a traditional steroid, for example. And it may be that there's something in that they can then use to make more drugs. And the point is that arguing that something's natural doesn't mean better.
Because obviously this stuff is like life and death stuff, like measles, meningitis, cancer. I mean, this is life and death stuff. And it's important that you listen to the advice from, I personally think the doctors, medical professional. But what I'm also seeing, so I was going to say that's the big stuff, is the kind of low level, I was going to say it, then I was not going to say it, but I'm now going to say it, obsessiveness that I'm seeing online. For example, people walking around supermarkets and looking at a loaf of bread and saying it's got a preservative in it. This is dreadful. This is what this is dreadful. We mustn't eat it. This is not just going to kill you, but this is going to poison you. And the preservatives in there so that it lasts longer, so you don't have to buy bread every day. Like it's a shelf life thing. And of course, everybody, it potentially, we know it's better to buy a totally fresh, newly baked bread from the baker, but not everybody can do that. So it's kind of like we've got to the stage where we've got these influencers walking around supermarkets, villainizing food because there's an ingredient in it that they can't read. That often happens. Does anyone even know what this means? So therefore it's poison. And it's like, well, no, actually, maybe we should look it up. And it might be, a kind of flavor that's added or a preservative, or it might be something that's actually harmless for you just because you can't read it. And I struggle with that because every time I go on TikTok, the problem is the more we watch it, the more we see it. This is obviously an algorithm issue. But, people are like going insane, worrying about every single thing in every single piece of food and calling it out. And then everybody underneath, oh my God, I'll never eat bread again. And it's like, we've been eating bread for centuries.
I think one of the things One of the things that kind of stands out for me as well is this kind of you must as well, which goes along with it. Because to me, I mean, I use all kinds of stuff that might work, maybe doesn't work, and that's fine. If you can afford it, that's fine. Go ahead, spend your money on CBD patches and CBD oil and turmeric supplements. And here I go racking my brain for what's in my cupboard that I found useful, and crystals. Some of it you may find useful just because it, joy, calm, and well-being are also very important parts of dealing with stuff. And if any of these things, they can impact your health. And if any of these things give you joy, calm, and well-being, doesn't really matter whether they're a placebo or whatever. If they're doing that, and if you can afford it, fine, go for that. If you can't, the place to go is traditional medicine, which in this country, obviously, we have the NHS, which is free. I'm terribly sorry if you are American. But, go for the traditional medicine and then you can layer on these things. And I think it's the same kind of thing you see with, I run, okay? And I'll see articles in magazines that are like, beetroot juice can improve your oxygen, whatever it is, like how you use oxygen when you run. And you go, I must get a beetroot shot. And you go, do you know what? If you're an elite athlete and you need that 0.2% advantage, then maybe that beetroot shot will help. But if you're just running a 5K every morning at a kind of casual pace and you drank 3 pints of beer last night, like the beetroot juice is probably not, you need to start at the bottom and work up. So you start with getting enough sleep, eating eating some vegetables and some protein. Basic building blocks of a healthy diet. You start with reducing stress. And then on top of that, you can put traditional medicine for any kind of issues that you might have. And then on top of that, if you like, then you can start layering things like controlling your protein to the gram and going to sound baths and stuff like that. But the first thing you need to do is the bits on the bottom, or otherwise your house is going to tumble. And the house is your body. Whether it's a temple or a house is up to you.
That's exactly the same in the menopause online space too. You can take HRT or not take HRT, but if you decide to take it, you need to sort out your lifestyle stuff too. It's not literally a magic bullet as such. Those, as you said, the building blocks are really important. But also life happens, it's like, as I said earlier, the people that come at me because I'm sharing some like ridiculous pudding, which is not good for me in any shape or form. And it's full of sugar and cream and whatever. But as long as I'm not eating that all the time, that's okay. And people are like, is that OUPF? And I'm like, well, yes, it is an ultra processed food. But, I don't, look at the rest of my diet and my lifestyle. It's okay. We need to kind of calm it down, and a balanced approach is good. And it's like the 80-20 rule, if you like. 80% of your diet and your movement and your lifestyle is healthy. And then, you have days where you don't go for a run and you sit on the sofa and you eat crisps and you watch telly. It's okay, because life happens. And I feel like it's fundamentalism from these people. They're like, this is what you have to do. You have to, but also all the time and never. And, just, and often finding what slightly infuriates me too is it can be often quite young people and guys telling me about my body. And I'm a bit like, what qualifications have you got? And you don't know what a period is, mate, like just all young, and it's like our bodies are different. And as we age and our lifestyles and our ethnicity, there's all sorts of different factors going in, and it's very one size fits all. And that's why I like the sketch, because it was just really like, he's vegan, unplug him, rather than he does amazing things for charity. He is a really healthy and fit person. He's done all this, like just unplug him, because it is that's the message I get in my DMs. They want to unplug me because I've had a pudding.
Setting it in a hospital was genius, and really, I think, demonstrated the ludicrousness. Sorry, ludicrosity? No, just making up new words of the whole thing. But I think when people feel out of control of their lives, they're looking for something that can help them control it. And I think that that's similar to kind of in the cancer space, in the menopause space. and increasingly just in the world in general, people are feeling like they can't control their stress levels. They can't control the amount of sleep they get because life is so busy, and that they can't control these basic things. And they're looking for a way to kind of skip that bit and skip straight to feeling well again. And that is the void where these influencers drop in.
But they never say therapy, though, do they? And I'm not saying you need therapy if you're unwell, but a lot of the vulnerability and the stress and all of that, therapy, for example, in whatever forms, would be a great thing. Getting outdoors, or, you know, vitamin D. You know, it's quite. And obviously, therapy costs money. Don't get me wrong, but the solution is never. I was going to say practical. I don't know if it is, but you know, it's just.
Again, therapy takes time. People want, you know, feeling so out of control. Therapy takes time. They want to they go, brilliant, I can solve it all by drinking raw milk. Hooray. I'll have more energy. I'll feel better. I'll be able to do this and that I couldn't do. I'm feeling like, you know, or the predatory behavior where there is a gap for these people to jump into.
That's why I think it's like the female version of the Manosphere. We are vulnerable for many, many reasons. It could be lifestyle, it could be stress, it could be health, age, you know, all these different things. And we're vulnerable and we're desperate. So therefore we're more likely to part with our money and believe people. And in the bit, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, you know, he said, I'm a doctor. And she's like, well, I had done 3 years, whatever, lifestyle yoga coaching or whatever. And I got 3,000. It was just brilliant because, again, there's people giving nutrition advice who aren't nutritionists. I mean, there's a whole call for doctors to be taught more nutrition in university because they're not taught it. But GPs have said, well, yeah, that's a way well, we don't have enough time to talk about nutrition.
Then maybe the GP shouldn't be dishing out the advice either, because they do.
They do or they don't, but you either get the one that's telling you nutritional advice and use that the other bit like, I don't think that's correct, or they don't know anything and they don't even mention lifestyle and go straight to drugs, which is then makes people think they are just trying to make money. You know, it's nuanced, but there are people giving nutritional advice. I mean, I make videos about food and I don't talk about macros because I probably get it all wrong anyway, but I talk about, you know, balance and healthiness and you know, and making sure you have healthy fats and fibers. So it's not like revolutionary what I'm saying. But what I would never say is, Gemma, you need to eat this and not that because you are poisoning your insides.
That's not your job.
It's not my job, and it's dangerous territory because I know nothing about your body because I'm not a doctor and I'm not a nutritionist, and I don't, you know, Yeah. So that it's just dangerous, isn't it?
I think to draw this one to a close, unfortunately, we're going to say we are so boring. Balance, people, balance, nuance. You do you. You want to do a sound bath? Fine, do a sound bath. But please have some balance and eat a vegetable and take the paracetamol, visit an actual doctor.
And eat fibre, I was going to end with. These people that just eat 12 eggs and a steak. Eat fibre. So you can poo. Moving on, I want to talk about beavers and otters.
I'm glad you put otters in there, not just beavers.
The thing that a percentage of people in the UK are getting really, I was going to say, getting their knickers in a twist about is the changing of the guard, let's just say, of the historical figures on our monetary notes in the UK. So we have notes in the UK for anyone that's out of the UK, and we have the king on one side, who is always there, and obviously before him it was the queen. And then we have historical figures on the other side, which is generally, I believe, they are chosen from a public vote, and they remain on the note for 10 years. The reason it's changed every 10 years is not because we have a need to keep, you know, we've got so many people we want to be on the notes, of which I kind of feel it should be, because of forgery. Because apparently if you keep notes in circulation, you know, with the same design on for a certain amount of time, it's easier to forge. So they change it every 10 years. So it was last changed in 2016. And the people that were chosen, or the current people on there, are Churchill, Jane Austen, Turner, and Alan Turing. So they're on the notes. This is the thing I had to write down, well, Gemma wrote it down for me, because it often comes up in the... I go to a local pub quiz, and sometimes I run it, and we can never remember which one is which, but they are the people on the notes. So there's been a public vote. Who would you like on the note? And the winner of the public vote by 60%, I believe, was nature. Obviously, we have great nature in our country, and people felt it would be good to celebrate. I don't think it's been 100% decided yet, and nobody's decided exactly which animals, but, you know, there's talk about beavers and otters and things like that. And most people, well, I was going to say most, lots of people are very happy about that, because we should celebrate animals, but also it takes away that ongoing debate about who is right and who is wrong on the note. There were other things in the mix. There was architecture, arts, history, you know, other things that people liked. But anyway, the Beavers have won. But as I said, people have got very, very upset. It was not because Jane Austen is coming off the note or Alan Turing, but because Winston Churchill is coming off the note. So Winston Churchill. And this note change has been a vehicle for people more on the right, let's just say, being really upset that our country, our government is taking off this important historical figure to our freedom and our, you know, history. Worth noting, the government has nothing to do with it. It's a public vote from the Bank of England. So the public voted for it, but people are very upset. And interestingly, Churchill's, I think it's his granddaughter, has been interviewed saying it's absolutely fine, he's coming off the note, because he was only on for 10 years and it's the 10-year mark. And actually, I voted for animals, and I think it's really great that animals are on there. So even his family don't care. And there's been lots of like people saying, well, like, I did know who Churchill was before 2016. So I think he still will be celebrated if you want him, kind of thing. So yeah, there's the whole debate. So I want to start off with, before we get into the ins and outs of Churchill and whether he should be on notes or whatever, who would you like to be on a note, Gemma? Did you vote?
I didn't vote. I didn't even know there was a vote. Did you know there was a vote?
I bet you don't.
No. But yeah, no, sorry I missed that. Maybe I'll vote next time. But I also didn't put in a potential name for Boaty McBoatface. So that, you know, I obviously just don't get a say in these things. Who would I put on a note? People wise, apart from me, obviously. I mean, you want to go for like the national treasures, don't you? Stephen Fry. Let's put Stephen Fry on a banknote. He's a national treasure.
I was saying before we came live that, you know, Kate Bush or something, it's an amazing female singer. It's always really historical. And don't get me wrong, I love history. But, you know, there are awesome people that are around.
It's only 10 years. Can we just like pick someone fun?
Exactly. But do you have a problem?
Yeah, 10 years.
Do you have a problem with a beaver or an otter being on the note?
Oh, we should stop saying beaver.
Nothing wrong with beaver.
Is that why their knickers are in a twist?
You know, do you have a problem with a grey squirrel being on there?
Absolutely not. Oh, the only problem I have with grey squirrels is they're an invasive species and they killed off the red squirrels. Put red squirrels on there. Bring red squirrels.
Yes, but
I care very little what's on a banknote.
Exactly.
And I think most people care very little what's on their banknotes. I also think people love random things to argue about. And I seem to remember when they put Jane Austen on it, there was a bit of a kerfuffle about it. When they put a woman on it, you know, women on banknotes. And I don't know whether it was because of her or because of who they were taking off, but, you know, there was a kerfuffle then. And I think a lot of this...
We have had women on there before.
I think, I have a note about women. There was a thing. The bank faced criticism in 2013 for the absence of women on its notes other than the Queen. And Jane Austen was added partly as a result of that campaign. There you go. That's what my notes say. But yeah, I think most people don't care. And it's very much a dog whistle thing now at the moment, isn't it? For this kind of divisive politics we have going on at the moment between where we're all allegedly split completely between being woke and being
Racist.
right wing. Yeah. I mean, I think I know which category I fall into. I think even when I'm asleep, I'm woke. But there was the guy on Question Time talking about it being a radical left-wing woke agenda
to put beavers and otters.
To put beavers on banknotes. And you go, they've got better things to do. I mean, the Green Party did an excellent reel about it. If you want to go to the Green Party's Instagram and have a look. But I really think this isn't what people are getting angry about. I think it's just another way to try and like polarize things. See, Kemi Badenoch apparently said that we were erasing our history and said that Thatcher should be on a banknote.
Yeah, but she's a historical figure. So maybe
she is a historical figure.
And she might.
And I mean, I always say about Thatcher that when I was growing up, we had a queen and a female prime minister. So at least I kind of thought women could be in charge. Not saying that's a good thing otherwise, but I didn't know anything about politics. But yeah, anyway. So, but then you go, well, why? Just because you liked her? But again, this is the thing. And, Winston Churchill is not an unproblematic figure. I am sorry. He's great and he did great stuff, but he also said some very problematic things that in another scenario could have gone in a very different direction. So I think that we just need to acknowledge that human beings are never unproblematic and that banknotes are just money. There are a lot. In Scotland, they already have wildlife on them. And I believe that the EU Central Bank is also talking about putting wildlife and rivers and flowers and things on their banknotes. But I think that's a lovely thing because it's an important part of a nation's identity as well. When you talk about countries, you talk about mountains, you talk about rivers, you talk about deserts, you talk about, I went to Morocco and a camel was one of the things that was a main thing that I saw there. So, when you're visiting the UK, maybe a cow, a dairy cow, or a horse roaming a field, or some fluffy sheep, or a beaver. I don't think I've ever seen
that's because
a beaver, but
they're in. I was going to say in denial. That's the wrong word. They're in
decline.
In what?
Decline.
That's the word.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It would be a big shame if we put them on a banknote and then they went extinct in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Well,
maybe putting them on the banknote will remind people.
I think it's a good idea because, as you said, you do, the countryside and the environment around you when you visit a country, it is part of your makeup, but also it is actually not political. So, the people are getting so upset about something, but actually by removing it, it takes away that I liked him. Well, I didn't because he did this. I think years ago, it wouldn't have mattered because we didn't have social media and constant information overload and division and arguments and trolling and bots commenting. We didn't have all of that. So you would put a prime minister on a banknote and they would just go on the banknote and you just get on with your life. Whereas now everything is a debate and an argument and it's exhausting. And it's exhausting for me and I'm sure it's exhausting for you. So actually putting hedgehogs on just takes that away. And I think that's not a bad thing because you could argue, if everyone got upset because they put a woman on, well, people would have been upset because there wasn't a woman on the notes, and then people will be upset because they put a woman on the notes. Then there'll be people that get upset because it was Jane Austen. They don't like Jane Austen. They would prefer if it was Emily Bronte. It's just, it goes on and on and on and on. And then someone will say, well, Jane Austen said this one thing in this one book once. And you're like, so actually a hedgehog is a lot less problematic from a everybody complaining perspective.
See, there is another angle on that though. Of course there is. There's always another angle in that there has never been a black or ethnic minority historical figure on a Bank of England note. And there's been a lot of pressure that there should be. I'm looking, I had notes that figures like Mary Seacole should have been on there. Over 100,000 people signed a petition for Seacole, which is more than actually voted in the who should be on the banknotes. the Bank of England played a significant role in financing aspects of the transatlantic slave trade when that was active, and several of its governors were plantation owners or things like that. So, the Bank of England doesn't have the most glowing history in racial equality and diversity. So there has been that campaign, and there is a bit of an argument that by going, do you know what, we're going to put animals on it, there may be sidestepping
Maybe
a thorny issue. So when we're going, oh, do you know what, maybe animals will just be less problematic and, less controversial. Maybe what they're actually doing is going, oh my God, we can't be bothered with the controversy of this. Let's just stick some hedgehogs on there.
And I think that's what I meant by, for them, it was easier and less problematic because nobody will be complaining. I'm wondering if there was a backlash to Alan Turing, or whether, as being the first gay person on there, I believe the first, I have no idea, but I bet there wasn't, because I think people probably didn't even know who it was. And obviously lots of people know who he is, but I can imagine lots of people not knowing and then just kind of ignoring. And isn't he on the 50 anyway?
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you actually saw a £50 note?
When was the last time you saw a £50 note?
So I think it's less visible to the people that would be upset, whereas Churchill's on the fiver, so he's probably the most visible as well. But it's just an excuse. I mean, the man on Question Time was, acting like, his granny had just been killed or something because of it, like he was really upset about it. And it's kind of like, does it change my life? Does it make me richer? Richer in all different types of ways by who's on there? No, like it doesn't. I don't care. Like, I literally don't care. I mean, isn't that?
See, I think he on Question Time had obviously been poked by something, I think. I mean, Farage, who's obviously the people's champion at all times, has come out and called it the definition of woke. So I think that it's that kind of, those people they're being poked from somewhere, aren't they? This isn't an idea they've come up with on their own, that this is a terrible thing. I think, it's the right-wing press that's prompting a lot of this. And it's part of that division again, I guess, that we were talking about earlier.
But when it's down to a vote, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? And it just, in a way, though, it makes me chuckle, because they're not saying it's the definition of woke because they've put, I don't know, whoever, a person on there that they really don't like, or that is really woke or whatever, it's a hedgehog. I mean, like,
but it's the removal that's making them say it's woke, isn't it? It's taking Churchill off that's making them say it's woke. Because if I look at the other people on there, I can't imagine that they're saying it's woke to stake off a gay guy or a woman, right? Or an artist? No, or an artist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe it's any of those three that's making them think changing it is woke. So it's Churchill, because he's like the definition of the British bulldog, isn't he?
Who fought Nazis. But anyway, we won't go into. But I think, how do we get to a place where we can make a change, like on the notes or whatever, without it becoming a political division? Or are we just past that? Are we destined for everything now? Because it didn't used to be this bad, I have to say. And obviously we've had social media now. We can say it's social media, but we've had, since the noughties. So obviously we have the algorithm. We do have bots, and we do have, in elections, there's, it's shown that there was Russian bots, doing things. And so there's a lot of outside sources. But how do we get to a place where the Bank of England can host a vote that people vote in and hedgehogs win without it turning into some big division? I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's exhausting, and then it adds to stress. Back to the first, what we were talking about earlier, people are stressed not only because of their health and their environment, but just by the negativity, the constant barrage of doom and gloom that you can't escape from. And you feel like
it's the problem with podcasts talking about it, Kate.
But I want to know how we can get to a place where, wouldn't it be wonderful if a decision is...
I like to think we're fairly balanced.
Yes. But, because it's like, it's just getting worse, isn't it? Like, everyone's opinion, it's so polarised, and there's no Well, there seems to be less and less centre ground, and it's just everything's an argument, and it's exhausting. You don't want to bloody turn your phone on. You don't want to watch the. You
No, it is exhausting. I absolutely agree with you. And yeah, I don't know where it's all going to end up, but I hope that one day we'll get back to nuance being something that's a bit more valued. Do you know what? Do you know what we're going to do? Do you know what we're going to finish off? We are going to calm ourselves down then, right? And we're going to decide which 4 animals we would put on banknotes. So the RSPCA has called for pigeons, gulls and foxes and animals that people don't like to put on it. So the RSPCA thinks, yeah, because people don't like them, and they would it could change perceptions of misunderstood animals. So you tell me, what animals would you put on the 5, 10, 20 and 50 pound notes?
First of all, we're not having a pigeon on a note. Pigeons eat all my shoots, all my leaves. No, I'm not having pigeons. Pigeons are a nightmare in my garden.
Okay.
Not having
So who would your 5 pound note animal be?
Oh, I don't know. I think we need to put on the hedgehog. I think we need the hedgehog. He's nearly extinct.
Yes.
All our fences mean it can't come through, and there's no grass anymore. A bee would be a good one.
A bee?
A bee would be good. I did say a sausage dog, but they're German, so you can't have them on our notes. I don't know if a pug is. Where does a pug originate from?
China.
They definitely can't be on our notes there. A bee, a hedgehog. Then you need a bird, don't you? An owl?
Yeah.
Do we do an owl? Is he a bit grand? Maybe he can be on the 50 pound note because he
could be on the 50. Yeah. So an owl on the 50.
So and then I suppose you could do a fish. Do we have a trout?
Oh, I think did we not? So have we not got 4 then? So we've got a hedgehog on the 5.
Good. They're really important.
Bee on the 10.
Yeah.
What did you want on the 20?
I was going to say, don't we not need a fish? If we're only doing animals, do we need like a trout or something, or do we?
Or a carp?
Yeah, what about a deer?
Oh, a deer, like a stag. Yeah.
Yeah,
one of those little muntjac deers that look like devils.
Yeah, deer I think is quite nice. Then
we'll go with the majestic stag.
And then and then an owl. Maybe
owl.
They are my choices. There's no pigeons involved. What about you?
I would quite like to see some of the more everyday animals celebrated. I think, okay, I will give you no pigeons, no rats, because they can get out of my house. I would maybe like to see the sparrow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an underrated bird, your little house sparrow. They're good to see.
Yeah.
Sparrow, that's like your basic 5 pound note. On a 10 pound note, I was going to go crow then, but then I thought that's another bird. Then. Okay, no crow then. Okay, we'll go with the red squirrel. Because I miss the red squirrel. I used to see them in Moat Park when I was a kid, and you never see them anymore. So I'm going to go with the red squirrel on the tenner.
Is the red squirrel the one that came over here that wasn't British? I feel like I saw a debate about you can't have this squirrel because it was introduced or something. I was like, oh, for goodness sake.
They're my notes. Like, whatever I like, and I want a red squirrel on them.
I know. A nice red squirrel.
Yeah, the grey squirrels are the ones that came over and wiped out the red squirrels.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where the red squirrels came on in the first place, but almost nothing is completely...
Okay, so that's nice.
Whatever.
What else on the 20?
A cabbage white, a butterfly.
That's a nice idea, but they do eat my vegetables.
Yeah, they're misunderstood, and they're beautiful.
I'm not a big fan of the cabbage white. Is it red admiral or not? You're trying to go common, aren't you? Common.
Yes, this is what I'm going for. The more common ones, the ones that are the ones that are underrated.
All right, so you did your insect, so you need another animal, maybe. I don't know.
And maybe I can have, for the £50, like, instead of going for a stag, which is that, like, regal option, but I don't see them that often, apart from, running around stately gardens and stuff like that. What I do see by the side of the road on the A11 is that little muntjac deer, which I believe is probably also an invasive species, but everything is when you finally get down to it. So I know a little muntjac deer. Or a badger.
Like a badger.
Though they keep culling those, so maybe that would be a bad idea.
Oh, it's when you said you see them on the
or a rabbit, road. And that was the other one. Was just a rabbit. Your regular rabbit.
Yeah, but just the one that runs in front of my dogs when I'm on a walk. Just the random grey wild rabbit.
Yeah. Your little grey fluffy tailed bunny rabbit. Nothing majestic. Just everyday good British animals.
Not a beaver in sight.
And thank you for joining us for another roundup of midlife chat, hot takes, and occasional moaning. Well, quite a bit of moaning.
Make sure you hit subscribe so your podcast app gently nudges you every Friday, because honestly, who remembers anything without a reminder these days? And also, we like people liking us because we're very needy.
And if you fancy being extra lovely, leave us a rating or a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and make sure you find time for yourself. You deserve it.